The Americans have done us an invaluable service. They have proven you correct. Our homeland is not invulnerable to attack.
They said the Battle of Midway turned the tide of the Pacific War. But the movie about it? That's where things get strange. Today we're diving into 20 weird facts about Midway, hidden footage, ancient movie stars, invented romances, and one bonus secret buried in plain sight. So dim the lights, and let's rewind it together, the Rewatch Club way. Number 1. The sound that punched you in the chest. Picture a movie theater in the summer of 1976. The lights drop, the bombers dive, and suddenly the whole room begins to shake. That wasn't your imagination. Midway was only the second film ever released in Sensoround, a system that pumped deep, low-frequency rumble through giant speakers bolted into the auditorium. During the battle scenes, the floor trembled, the seats vibrated, and dust reportedly drifted down from theater ceilings. It was cinema you could feel in your ribs. Universal had debuted the gimmick with Earthquake 2 years earlier, and only a handful of films ever used it again. For a whole generation of kids, this was the loudest, most physical movie experience of their lives, the day a war film reached out and grabbed them by the chest. Number 2. The battle you're watching isn't Midway. Here's the twist that fools almost everyone. Most of the combat in Midway is real footage, shot by actual Navy cameramen, just not at Midway. To save money, the filmmakers leaned heavily on archival war reels, and much of that color footage came from battles fought years later, like Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and Leyte Gulf. So when you watch ships burning and planes spiraling into the sea, you're often watching 1944 and 1945, not June of 1942. Some shots even show kamikaze attacks, something that barely existed at the time of Midway. It's a strange kind of magic trick, a film about one battle, quietly stitched together from the wreckage of a dozen others. Once you know, you honestly can't unsee it. Number 3. Borrowed from Torah. Torah! The scavenging didn't stop at newsreels. Midway also recycled dramatic footage from other movies, most famously the big-budget 1970 epic Torah. Explosions, dogfights, and sinking ships from that film were folded straight into this one, which reportedly did not thrill Torah's own director one bit. But that was only the beginning. Sharp-eyed fans have traced shots back to the 1956 film Away All Boats, the 1944 classic 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, and even the spectacular aerial combat of Battle of Britain. There are pieces of John Ford's 1942 documentary woven in there too. In a very real sense, Midway is a greatest hits reel of Hollywood war cinema, a movie built out of other movies, held together by an all-star cast and a whole lot of nerve. Number 4. Filmed on a ship that missed the battle. When the cast needed a real aircraft carrier to stand on, the production came aboard the USS Lexington. And here's the irony. This Lexington never fought at Midway. She was commissioned in 1943, nearly a full year after the battle the movie depicts. By the mid-1970s, she was one of the last surviving World War II-era carriers still in active service, which made her the perfect stand-in, even if the timeline didn't quite line up. Fans who served in the Navy will feel a real pang of recognition here, because that same ship sailed on for decades afterward. Today, the Lexington rests at Corpus Christi, Texas, as a museum you can actually walk through. So the deck where Charlton Heston barked his orders is still out there, quietly waiting for visitors. Number 5. Toshiro Mifune never says a word. One of the biggest legends in the entire cast is the Japanese icon Toshiro Mifune, playing Admiral Yamamoto. He's commanding, magnetic, unforgettable, and you never actually hear his voice. The producers wanted the Japanese officers to speak English, so American audiences wouldn't need subtitles. But Mifune's English was reportedly so heavily accented that they feared viewers simply couldn't follow him.
We have no definitive intelligence reports, only opinions and estimates, and continued silence from Yamamoto does not make them a fact.
Their solution? Dub him entirely, using the American voice actor Paul Frees. If that name means nothing to you, his voice absolutely will. Frees was the Pillsbury Doughboy, Boris Badenov, and Burgermeister Meisterburger, among hundreds of other roles. So one of the most towering samurai film stars in history delivers all his lines through the pipes of a serial commercial mascot. It's one of the strangest casting quirks in all of war movie history. Number 6. A fleet commanded by senior citizens. Midway assembled one of the most star-packed casts of the decade, and also one of the oldest. Henry Fonda was 71 when he played Admiral Nimitz. Charlton Heston was 52. Glenn Ford, Robert Mitchum, Hal Holbrook, Cliff Robertson, nearly all of them were seasoned men well into middle age or beyond. And here's the poignant part. The real Battle of Midway was won by the young, pilots and sailors overwhelmingly under the age of 30, many barely out of their teens. Watching a fleet of gray-haired legends refight their battle carries a bittersweet quality, especially because so many of these actors were themselves genuine World War II veterans. They weren't just playing soldiers up there. They were remembering, one last time, on the biggest screen they could possibly find. Number 7. Tom Selleck without the mustache. Freeze the right frame and you'll spot future superstars hiding in the background. A young Tom Selleck, years before Magnum, PY, and famously without his trademark mustache, appears in a small role as an aide. Nearby is Eric Estrada, still a couple of years away from roaring onto television screens and chips. And that gruff officer over there? That's Dabney Coleman, long before he became one of Hollywood's favorite on-screen villains. It's a perfect reminder of how these old Hollywood epics worked, legends up top, and hungry newcomers filling every uniform behind them. Fans love pausing this film just to play Spot the Star. Half the fun of Midway today is realizing how many famous faces were quietly waiting in the wings, each one just a single big break away from fame. Number 8. Henry Fonda had been here before. Henry Fonda's Admiral Nimitz feels effortless, and there's a good reason for that. Fonda had actually played Nimitz once before, in the 1965 war film In Harm's Way. Slipping back into the Admiral's uniform 11 years later, he already knew the man's calm, steady authority by heart. But the connection runs even deeper than that.
But that's only 2 and I'm beginning to stutter. And I made about 76.
Yeah. And you haven't mentioned Mr. Roberts right away.
No.
Back in 1942, Fonda was a real sailor in the United States Navy, and he lent his voice as a narrator to John Ford's Oscar-winning documentary about the actual Battle of Midway. So, when Fonda stands on that bridge, he isn't merely acting. He's a genuine Navy veteran, revisiting a battle he'd helped tell the world about more than 3 decades earlier. Few casting choices in the whole film carry that much real weight. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this, do us a small favor. Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to RewatchClub so you never miss a deep dive. We've covered war classics like Zulu and Crimson Tide before, so tell us which one was your favorite. And stick around, because that bonus secret is coming. Number 9. An NFL legend in uniform. Keep watching the background and the surprises just keep coming, including one from a completely different sport. Miami Dolphins legend Larry Csonka, one of the most punishing running backs in NFL history, turns up in Midway in a small, uncredited role as a Navy commander. This was the mid-70s, when Csonka was a household name and a Super Bowl champion, so seeing him trade his football helmet for an officer's cap is a genuine double-take. It's exactly the kind of blink-and-you'll-miss-it casting that makes these sprawling ensemble films so endlessly rewatchable. Sports fans of a certain age will grin the very moment they recognize him, and it fits the film's whole personality perfectly. Throw every recognizable face you can find into the mix, credited or not, and let audiences hunt for them. Number 10. John Williams, 1 year before Star Wars. That stirring, brassy Midway march you hear throughout? It came from a composer who was about to change movie history forever. John Williams wrote the score for Midway in 1976, just 1 single year before he unleashed the music of Star Wars onto the world. He'd already won huge acclaim for Jaws back in 1975, which means Midway sits right in the middle of one of the most staggering hot streaks any composer has ever had. Listen closely, and you can hear the confident, marching heroism that would soon come to define a galaxy far, far away. The Midway March went on to become a genuine concert favorite, performed by the Boston Pops for years. It's easy to forget that beneath all that borrowed footage beats a truly great original piece of music. Number 11. The real survivor was on set. Some of the film's deepest emotion comes straight from a man who actually lived it. Ensign George Gay was the sole survivor of Torpedo Squadron 8, a unit almost entirely wiped out during the real battle. Gay was shot down, floated alone in the open Pacific, and reportedly watched much of the fighting unfold from the water. Decades later, he served as an advisor on this very film, helping shape how his squadron's sacrifice would be portrayed, while actor Kevin Dobson played him on screen. Think about that for a moment. A genuine Midway survivor stood on that set, guiding actors through the worst day of his young life. It's a quiet, powerful detail that fans often overlook. The reminder that behind all the Hollywood spectacle, there were real men and very real loss. Number 12. Robert Mitchum phoned it in, lying down. Robert Mitchum shows up as the famously aggressive Admiral Bull Halsey, and he plays almost the entire role flat on his back. That wasn't laziness, it was history. During the actual Battle of Midway, the real Halsey was hospitalized with a severe skin condition and had to sit the fight out, handing command over to Admiral Spruance. So the film shows him bedridden, quietly stewing over missing all the action. Mitchum, ever the wry professional, reportedly joked that it was the easiest paycheck of his entire career. A couple of days' work without ever once leaving the pillow.
You told me once, Jet, when you're in command, command.
It's a rare case where an actor's minimal effort actually matched the historical truth perfectly. Sometimes the laziest-looking performance turns out to be the most accurate one in the whole movie. Number 13. The romance that never happened. Every big Hollywood war epic seemed to need a love story, and Midway simply invented one from scratch. Charlton Heston's Captain Matt Garth is entirely fictional, and so is the tender, complicated subplot about his son falling for a Japanese-American woman whose family faces wartime internment. None of it really happened. It was grafted onto the true history to give audiences a personal, emotional thread to hold onto amid all the maps and admirals. Critics have argued for years about whether it helps the film or distracts from it, but it does capture something real about the 1970s, a country beginning to openly wrestle with the darker chapters of its own wartime past. So while the battle is history, the heart of the drama is pure Hollywood invention, a little spice added to a story that was already extraordinary. Number 14. The cut you'll never get to see. When Midway became a genuine hit, Universal did something clever and slightly baffling. For a later television broadcast, they shot roughly 45 extra minutes of brand new footage, added battle scenes, plus a whole new romantic subplot with a girlfriend for Heston's character. The catch? Those new scenes were filmed in the boxy, square television shape of the era, not the sweeping widescreen of the theatrical version. That mismatch means the full extended cut can never be properly reassembled for modern widescreen viewing. A handful of those scenes survive as extras on later home video releases, but the complete longer Midway is effectively a lost film, trapped forever in the wrong shape. For collectors and completists, it's a small, maddening piece of movie history that simply got away. Number 15. It was nearly made in 2 languages. In its earliest planning stages, Midway was meant to be something far more ambitious. The idea was to shoot it in both English and Japanese, with each side of the story told in its own language, much like the acclaimed 1970 film Tora had done. It would have given the Japanese characters real authenticity and dignity, but the plan reportedly fell apart when a deal couldn't be reached to bring a Japanese production company, director, and cast on board. So the film pivoted, English took over completely.
This report is a great victory. We've lost only 7 planes. We've destroyed more than 40 enemy aircraft.
And the Japanese admirals ended up speaking to one another in English on screen. It's fascinating to imagine the more respectful, bilingual version that so nearly was, a bolder, richer movie hiding just behind the one we actually got. Number 16. The director who left for King Kong. Before Jack Smite took the helm, another filmmaker was lined up to direct Midway, John Guillermin. He walked away, and where he went next is almost too on the nose. Guillermin left to direct the giant, glossy 1976 remake of King Kong, the one that famously perched the great ape atop the World Trade Center. So one of Hollywood's big 1976 spectacles essentially swapped directors with another. It's a small footnote, but it captures the churn of 70s blockbuster filmmaking, where enormous projects traded talent around like playing cards. It also leaves a fun what-if hanging in the air. How might Midway have looked in the hands of the man who spent that same year wrangling a 50-foot gorilla instead? We'll never really know, but it's a delicious little piece of trivia. Number 17. Toshiro Mifune's third turn as Yamamoto. Toshiro Mifune didn't just wander into the role of Admiral Yamamoto, he practically owned it. By the time he stepped onto Midway, Mifune had already portrayed the legendary Japanese admiral more than once in earlier Japanese productions. Yamamoto had quietly become something of a signature part for him, and he brought all that lived-in gravity to the American film. And there's a poignant real-life echo here, too. During the actual war, Mifune himself served in Japan's military.
Our planes are armed with torpedoes on Commander Genda's advice. Hardly suitable for bombing an airstrip. Aye, Commander?
Reportedly training aerial gunners and photographers. So the man playing the very architect of Japan's Pacific strategy carried genuine wartime experience of his own. It adds a layer of authenticity that no amount of dubbing could ever fully erase, even if, as we learned earlier, you never actually hear his real voice. Number 18. Released for America's 200th birthday. Timing is everything, and Midway arrived at a perfect patriotic moment. It hit theaters in June of 1976, right in the very heart of America's bicentennial summer, as the entire country celebrated 200 years of independence. A rousing, star-spangled war epic about one of the Navy's greatest victories was practically tailor-made for that mood, and audiences responded in force. Despite mixed reviews and all that recycled footage, Midway became one of the biggest box office hits of the whole year, easily earning back its modest budget many times over. It was a last hurrah for a certain kind of old-fashioned, flag-waving Hollywood spectacle. Nostalgia fans will remember that summer vividly. Fireworks, tall ships, and a movie that made the entire theater rumble like distant guns. Number 19. The Yellow Pinto at Pearl Harbor. For all its enormous scale, Midway is a goldmine of goofs, and once you start spotting them, they're impossible to ignore. In the film's final dockside scene, look past the actors and you'll notice most of the background crowd is dressed in unmistakable 1970s clothing, not 1940s attire. And parked right there in the shot, a bright yellow Ford Pinto, a car that wouldn't exist until decades after the battle. Elsewhere, an American flag proudly displays 50 stars, even though there were only 48 states back in 1942. There's even a box of honey-made graham crackers sporting mid-70s packaging. These little anachronisms have become a beloved part of the film's charm, the kind of blooper hunt that keeps eagle-eyed fans coming back for just one more look. Number 20. The last of its kind. Step back a little and Midway takes on a certain melancholy grandeur. It was one of the very last of the great, old-school, all-star World War II epics, the kind Hollywood had been churning out since the 1950s, wall-to-wall with famous faces pointing at maps. And it landed at a real hinge point in film history. Jaws had arrived the year before, in 1975. Star Wars would explode a year later, in 1977. Between them, the blockbuster era was being born, and this stately, star-studded style of war picture was quietly going extinct.
Second sighting reported, Strawberry 5. 2 enemy carriers, battleship bearing Midway, 320 degrees.
Arguably, no film would attempt this scale of World War II spectacle again until Saving Private Ryan in 1998. So Midway isn't just a movie, it's a farewell to an entire way of making them. Which brings us, at last, to that bonus secret. Number 21. Bonus fact. The Japanese carriers were secretly American. Here it is, the single weirdest secret in the entire film. Remember how the production had almost no budget for special effects and no Japanese aircraft carrier to actually film? Their solution was brilliant, cheap, and slightly absurd. For certain overhead shots of the Japanese fleet, the filmmakers simply took footage of the American carrier they already had, the USS Lexington, and flipped the whole image horizontally. On real US carriers, the island superstructure sits over on the right, or starboard side. By reversing the film, they shifted it to the left, hoping audiences would read it as a different enemy ship. So, in some shots, the mighty Imperial Japanese fleet closing in on Midway is really just one American carrier, filmed and then shown backwards. Once you know, you'll never watch those aerial shots the same way again. That's movie magic, 1976 style. And that's the strange, stitched-together magic of Midway, a film built from borrowed battles, aging legends, and a carrier pretending to be the enemy. Flawed? Absolutely. But unforgettable, and made by men who lived the very history they were filming. If this brought back memories or taught you something new, do the honorable thing, sailor. Like the video, comment your favorite fact, and subscribe to RewatchClub. Because the only club worth enlisting in is the one that never stops rewatching. Which moment from Midway still gives you chills? And which war film should we cover next? You tell us, and we'll dive in. Until then, keep the classics close, and we'll see you on the next Rewind.